When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello world. How are we all today? I hope you're kicking ass and biting butt, and no, probably don't do that bit, but certainly go for your dreams, because that's what this show is all about. And we've got a chap today who I've been just chatting with him beforehand. He's going to provide amazing content because he is a man who is rocking and rolling with the best of them. Today's guest is a man who can attest to have tried, enjoyed, and had mixed success at many things before finding his true calling in life. From a musician to a blogger to a martial arts participant to even a dog trainer, it seems that his path to success has been a mixed one. But as we see time and time again on Join Up Dots, getting to where everything pulls together in life is often a bit of a journey anyway. And it's only by looking back and, guess what, joining up those dots that you can see how it all began working for you. Our guest found the thing that has taken him to the top by realising his limitations as a blogger. He realised that no matter how much content he was producing, not enough people were seeing it. How the hell do you get your content out to the widest audience possible, he thought. It's all right writing the latest works of Shakespeare, but if no one gets to see it, then what's the point? So our guest created Triber, an online community of bloggers who work together to share each other's content. And as they say, the rest is history. And now with this success under his belt, he's now a sought-after speaker, strategic marketing consultant, and if you need a love song banged out for your special person, I'm sure he could do that too. We'll touch on that later. So let's bring onto the show to start joining up dots, the one, the only Mr. Dino Dogan. How are you, Dino?
I'm great, David. How you doing?
I am rocking and rolling. I feel particularly excited tonight. It is, 8:15 in the United Kingdom, and I've been working all day, and I feel like I'm on drugs. I'm not on drugs. I must just be high with the excitement of speaking to you, sir.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you.
You can I start with a couple of things? You did one of the best Dalek impressions I've ever heard an American do. Whenever I say anything about Doctor Who or that, it's very rare that the American population really know what I'm talking about. Are you a Doctor Who fan, or are you just somebody that likes to do a metallic voice every now and again?
Well, it's actually both. My favorite Doctor Who is the one from, I think it's in the 70s, the one with the scarf and curly hair.
Tom Baker.
That's my favorite Doctor Who. Yes.
He was my Doctor Who. I'm 44 years old. How are you? How old are you, sir?
I'm 38.
Right, okay, so we're not a million miles away. And
no, not at all.
Doctor Who stopped for quite a while. And so when I was growing up, it was Tom Baker, as you say, curly hair and a scarf. And now you sort of watch it with David Tennant and Matt Smith, and it's like watching movies, it's big budget stuff. And my son is 12, and he started growing up with the latest Doctor Who. And so I said to him one day, the old ones, these are the good ones, we should watch these. This is my Doctor, because we've all got your own Doctor. It's like you've got your own James Bond, isn't it? The ones that you grow up with. And I said to him, this is the one, this is the Doctor Who. I watched 10 minutes of it. It was rubbish. It was beyond rubbish. I don't know how
Don't
I
go
listened.
back.
Never go back.
No, it's much better in your memories.
What is your memories of it like, though? Is it rose tinted?
Oh, it was so exciting. You know what I mean? His swagger and traveling through time. I mean, I'm 10 years old sitting on a couch. I remember as if it was yesterday. It was amazing. It was a romp. It was awesome.
Well, my best kind of anecdote about Daleks, and it's not really Daleks, but it kind of reminded me of it. You know those people, unfortunately, that have had a tracheotomy, and they have to stick like a metallic thing in their throat, and they talk like that, sort of talk like Daleks. Now, I've never met anybody who's had a tracheotomy at all, ever. And I was in New York one day, and we went into this restaurant or this fast food place. Can't quite remember it was. And there must have been a tracheotomy convention, because on the table behind us, there was 16 people with those. Yes, I'll have the fries. I will have the fries too. And it was like an amazing Dalek convention behind me. Now, that is
surreal.
That is astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah. That is surreal. Well, one great story deserves another. I'll tell you the most amazing thing I've ever seen. How's that?
Go for it.
All right. So a bunch of years ago, I visited a good friend of mine. We grew up together. He lives in Sweden. So I visited him in Sweden, and I saw the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Now, for this to make sense, you need to know that I play a piano a little bit. I'm okay at it. Not great. It's not a brag, but it's relevant to the story. So I play a piano. So when I see a great piano player or a keyboard player, I recognize one. That's why it's relevant. So have you ever been to Stockholm, David?
No, I haven't.
It's an amazing city. I highly recommend it. It's the size of New York, but all the buildings are, they're not skyscrapers. They're really like 5, 6, 7, 8 stories tall. So that way all the exhaust fumes and all that stuff kind of evaporates very easily. It's a very nice, very clean city. In it, there's a main drag, cobbled streets, goes for miles. And in the summertime, every block has something happening. A magic act, a juggler, musicians mostly, right, from all over the world. And on one corner, there was a dude strapped in a wheelchair. So he was sitting in a wheelchair. His arms are strapped to the wheelchair. He is drooling out of the side of his mouth, and he's playing a keyboard. He's playing a classical piece better than I could if I spent months practicing. He's playing it on a keyboard with his toes.
With his toes. And what
with his toes.
What tune was he playing?
I don't remember exactly, but it was a classical piece, and he plays a better piano than I could.
Can I ask you, Mr. Dogan, and I don't want to say that you're naive because I've only just met you, but was it an electronic keyboard?
It was an electronic keyboard, and it wasn't set to the demo setting.
How do you know? How do you know? That's what I was going to ask. How do you know it wasn't?
Because I'm a skeptic, and I checked.
You went up.
I know my keyboards.
You went up to a disabled busker and checked to see if he was pulling a fast one.
I looked him up and down, man. It was amazing.
Just the fact that he's out there should be enough for you, sir. But you're going there and you're trying to peer behind the curtain and steal the magic.
Where's the wizard?
Where's the wizard? Yes, that's exactly what you were doing.
That's a great question to ask at all times.
Where's the wizard? Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to walk down to my local school and ask, where's the wizard? And I think I'll be arrested after about 30 seconds. I certainly will. But your life, that is a fascinating story because your life is kind of like somebody that sees the world with slightly different eyes. I've been stalking you for the last week because I knew you were coming on the show. And a lot of people call it research, but I like to say it's stalking. And there's a kind of vibe about you which is kind of edgy, a little bit weird, but certainly fun. And it's almost like you ask questions that people wouldn't normally ask. Would that be right?
I try to. I think this is something we have in common, David, because I've been stalking you back. And you have this contrarian, counterintuitive approach to things as well. And I think that's super healthy. I don't watch mainstream news. I don't stay on top of like trending topics and the stuff that's like most popular stuff. I don't care about it, often to my own detriment. I'm way over in the left field.
I don't watch the news either, and it came to bite me today. I don't know when this is going to go out. Well, I do know what day it's going to go out, but hopefully people are listening to it for about 10 years later. And people were talking to me about this plane that's been shot down, and they think the Russians have shot this plane down.
Yeah.
And I had no idea about it. Because
me neither.
Until
this morning, I watched The Daily Show.
Yeah, I stopped looking at the news probably when my first child was born. And I now find that basically, if I do watch the news, it's bad stuff. And if I don't watch the news, it doesn't affect me. And if it's a really big story, you find out about it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that not the deep, profound statement that we could stop this whole episode on and people will be writing it down?
Absolutely. I find no value in watching the news. And I don't know how it is in England. You're in England right now, correct?
Yes, I am.
I don't remember how it is in Europe. I think it's pretty much the same as it is in the United States. But a lot of people take great pride in reading a Sunday paper. You know, Wall Street Journal and stuff like that, these traditional authoritative newspapers that bring you these stories from around the world, and people read them on Sundays to stay abreast of current events. And a lot of people take pride in that. I see no value in it. None whatsoever.
I take pride in actually being this is a good conversation, and it's not getting me anywhere where I want to talk about, but who cares? But I realised today, because somebody told me that the new episode of The Simpsons is coming out. I have never watched one episode of The Simpsons in my entire life.
Interesting.
I've never watched one Harry Potter. I've never watched one Lord of the Rings. Game of Thrones, absolutely no idea. I kind of keep away from anything that is kind of mainstream for some bizarre reason. And I've now built up a pride that I'm actually adding to these things, where it used to just be one or two things I'd say, oh, I've never seen that before. But now I can sort of throw out all these things, and people, it's like I'm living in a cave with Wi-Fi, and I just poke my head out every now and again and do one of these shows, and then I crawl back in. And I find it liberating, really, that there's so much in this world that I don't know about, because the things I do know about seem to be things that nobody else knows about. It's taking us back to that first question, that you see the world in a slightly different way to other people, and it's those kind of weird things and not the mainstream that I find interesting.
Me too. I absolutely agree. That stuff fascinates me.
I was talking to a chap who went live on episode 85, and he is interested in small worlds. And he's a journalist, he's an author, and he goes around the world looking at communities within communities. So the first one that he started doing was the Jewish metal scene, which kind of blows your mind. But the sort of,
interesting.
You kind of think, is there
immediately? I want to know more about that.
Yeah, well, you listen, episode 85, and you'll hear him, and
nice.
you kind of think to yourself, what can you talk about? But he's built a whole career on researching and talking about these small worlds, and he likes the commonalities that these small sort of groups of people who are operating together and enjoying their company, but nobody else kind of knows what they're doing or pays any interest. But he finds commonalities in that across the globe, and to me, that is fascinating.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a tribe. You just described a tribe.
Yeah.
And I'm all about tribes. Yeah, that's fascinating. I need to find out more.
Yeah, Keith Khan Harris, his name is, and I'll send you the link. But yeah, that was a brilliant segue into the reason why I've got you on the show today, because you are a founder of Triber, a community platform for bloggers. So tell us what that is, and then I want to delve back and see the steps. We're going to join up the dots, how you got to that point. So what actually is Triber for people out there that haven't heard about it and are not that interested in blogging?
Well, for people who are not interested in blogging, I think let's touch on that in a second. But first, I want to say that Triber is very simply, it's a social network for bloggers. So it's just a place where content creators, bloggers, podcasters, YouTubers, they can go and they can group together based on whatever. Same niche, same location, same posting frequency, whatever commonality you find with somebody else, you can sort of come together and you can help cross promote one another. So when you publish a new podcast, for example, it would come into my stream automatically. Triber imports it from your blog, and then I can share it to my Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and so on. And you do the same thing for me. And now scale that out to like 50 or 150 people, right? And now you have, a few hundred shares. So that's the basic premise of Triber. But why it's important to people who are not content creators is this. The world is lopsided, right? There's the 0.1% of world's wealth pools at the top, and then there's like big empty space, and then there's the rest of us, right? And the same kind of disparity exists online. There's about 100 top internet properties, and we all know them. You know, it's your Googles, it's your Facebooks, it's your Yahoos, it's your Twitters, it's your Mashables and BuzzFeed and, that kind of stuff, right? And 99% of the attention that people, when they're online, 99% of attention that they're paying to this 1% of these sites that are super, super popular. So when you and I release some content, David, it's, we're lucky if it finds any kind of audience, much less a large audience. So the premise behind Triber is simple. Societies, in this case, internet is a society in my mind. Societies where there's a wealth disparity are unstable and oppressive. In real life, we can compare that to Saudi Arabia or something like that, where, very small group controls large portion of the wealth. There's a big empty space, and then there's all the poor people, right? It's always oppressive, and it's always unstable because it's just a matter of time before, the keg underneath the wealthy explodes. So, and societies that are that have a large, expansive middle class are prosperous societies. They're enlightened societies. They are educated societies. And right now, the internet is Saudi Arabia. Right now, the internet is wealthy 0.1% command 99% of attention. And what we're trying to do with Triber is we're trying to create a bigger, greater, more expansive middle class of content creators so that you can get your narrative out there. You can get your content out there. You can get your thoughts out there, and they can spread across the larger population rather than these top 1% controlling the narrative, controlling the story, and all that stuff. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with Triber, create a larger, more expansive middle class of content creators.
Because that seems absolute sense. But I'd never thought of it. I'd never thought of it until I started looking into your background and I saw what Triber was about. And my first thought was, I wonder if I could use this for my show. And that was the first thought. Now, is it something that you people out there who have got a body of work should be on? Or is it somebody that when they're just starting they should? Or does it not matter at all?
We've really built it so that it takes your blog from 0 to 60 as quickly as possible. So it's more certainly for people who are just starting to create content. So yeah, if you're new to it, yes, Triber is definitely for you. And it all depends on how you've set up your presence online. Like if you've been around for a long time and you're getting thousands of shares and thousands of clicks and everybody's looking to you as if you're some kind of god, then you don't need Triber, because Triber is a peer-based network, right? So it's a lateral structure rather than a hierarchical structure. So if you've been around for a very long time and you have plenty of notoriety and audience and traffic and all that stuff, then you don't need Triber.
I think I need Triber. I'm going to jump onto Triber and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to report back to the world's population that are coming to my show on a daily basis how good it is, because it just seems like something that we should all be using.
Good. Let me know when you're in there. I'm a member of a business podcasters group, and you would be a great fit for that.
I would love to be in that as well. So let's jump back and let's start joining up the dots, because your life is one that seems to be the classic stumbles and falls. There's a passion running through you, but it took a while for you to actually find your feet. And once you found your feet, it almost seemed effortless in one play. I can see parts of you, especially your presenting, where you just see that you're having fun. And when life starts to be fun, you're really on your thing. So do you remember when it first started to come together for you?
Yes. When I finished school, when I in my mid-20s, I started to learn stuff.
Shouldn't you have been doing it at school?
I know, right? But schools, they don't teach you how to learn.
You were just going around shouting, "Show me the wizard." That's all you were doing.
Not even, right? Not even. I learned to look for the wizard much later on. But the school system is completely screwed up in the United States, as well as in Europe, as well as in other parts of the world. I was born and raised in Bosnia, so I grew up in Europe. But same school system exists in the United States. Rockefeller, about 100 years ago, he went to Germany to see how they've done their school system. And their school system was based on a Prussian school system from like 2,000 years ago. And Prussian school system, the point of it wasn't to educate their people. The point of the Prussian school system was to create obedient soldiers and docile citizenry. That was the point of the Prussian school system. And that's exact same school system that exists today throughout the world. It's like, this is where you need to sit, and you know your place, and there's a hierarchy within the classroom, and the teacher is the one that you need to listen to, and here's ABC that you need to cover, and here's the correct answers to the questions that we're going to ask. And it's a very kind of a rote execution type of deal. You don't learn how to learn. You just learn some stuff, right?
Yes, I agree with you totally. You know, I totally buy into this, and I'm going to let you finish, but I'm also going to throw in that literally every single person that I've spoken to who is successful believes what you're saying as well.
Yeah, yeah. So in my mid-20s, I discovered books. And I started reading books. And for many years, and even today, I've probably read about 50 books per year. Or listen to, or whatever, right? Because I love audiobooks, especially when I travel and whatnot. I start about 150 books, but I quit them because I don't find them interesting for whatever reason. But I discovered reading, and I discovered books in my mid-20s, and I discovered learning in my mid-20s, and that changed everything for me. So it was a kind of a slow build-up from there. And there's few books, and we can talk about some of those if you like, but there's few books that have been sort of like milestones through my life that have made a huge difference.
Give us a couple, Dino. Give us a couple of your favorite.
So I'm not a huge advocate for Brian Tracy, the self-help guru guy. Mm-hmm. But he has a set of audiobooks that he wrote with a fella from, I want to say, Cambridge. He's a learning researcher. I forgot his name. But they partnered up on a book, and it's called Accelerated Learning Techniques. And it's a great book that will teach you how to learn. So if you have that as your base, that's amazing. Here's another one. Memory. I always thought that memory was one of those things that you're blessed with, and you either have it or you don't. And my memory was terrible when I was, in my teen years, in my early 20s or whatever. But then I discovered this book, and it taught me that you can actually, it's a skill set, and you can improve your skill set. And my memory is amazing now, right? And the book, and again, I don't necessarily recommend this author on his own merits, but it's a good book to sort of guide you through the possibilities. And it's called Mega Memory by Kevin Trudeau. It's a great book that will actually, teach you some stuff that you can implement right then and there to improve your memory. But more importantly, it'll open up the window and let you see the, possibilities, So those were the two that come to mind. Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power it's like, when your whole life you have a kind of a vague sense of that there's some stuff happening under the surface when it comes to interpersonal relationships, especially the hierarchical interpersonal relationships, between kings and servants, or whatever you call them, parents and children, teachers and, kids in school, boss and employee, whatever you want to call it, right? Well, he covers those. He talks about those. and it's just an incredibly revealing book. And I'll give you one example, and then I'll shut up. Um, um, don't outshine your master. If you're an employee and you've ever outshined your boss, you know what I'm talking about. Your job as an employee is to make your boss look good. That's it. That's the job description for every employee ever, everywhere. And if you outshine your boss, if you outshine your master, you're not going to have a good time. So that's one of the 48 laws of power. And of course, Robert Greene, covers a much wider spectrum and many laws, if you will. And it's just an amazing book. And I could go on.
I always set out to outshine my master. Do you know that? I didn't see there was any point being at work if I wasn't outshining my boss, basically. Because
How'd that work out?
No, I'm not there anymore. And I'm sitting in a small shed on my own at the back of the garden.
Yeah.
But I'm wearing shorts, and I couldn't do that where I was. So things are better than they used to be. Mm-hmm. Did you have benchmarks of success? Because you're obviously successful. There's no doubt about it. You're on this show, so that's a benchmark of huge success. But do you have sort of success where you might be sitting in Starbucks or something at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and you look at all these people whizzing around, and you're just kind of in your own world, and you think, yes, this is really what it's all about. Very simple success benchmarks.
When, first I reject the premise. I don't feel successful. I just don't feel successful. And I think that's actually a good thing, because the second you start feeling successful, you're going to stop working, and then you're no longer going to be successful.
But it's right for me to say that you're successful, Bo, isn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Sure. In 2006, I set out to live in New Zealand and have a job where I can work from home. All right. And that was my 5-year plan. So I guess that would be then 2011, 5 years later. I was 50-50 success-wise. I'm not in New Zealand, but starting in about 2010, 2011, I was able to go to Starbucks and work from Starbucks, or work from home, or travel and go to Lake Placid for 2 weeks and work from there, or go to Tucson, Arizona for a few months and work from there. And it's and I can do that. So that piece of the equation, that piece of the 5-year plan worked out.
But that is perfect, isn't it? For so many people. And I was in it for years and years and years, where I'd commute up to London, I'd get on an underground with my armpit in people's faces and people's armpits in my face, and we're squeezed in, and you get out the other end. The thought of now that I walk up to the back of my garden and I sit down and do this, and I've got like a 15-second commute, is amazing. And I was only saying it today. It is beyond amazing to be able to create an environment that fits around your responsibilities other than you fitting around other people's responsibilities.
It's the whole idea of whose empire are you building, your own or somebody else's? And I mean, to me, the answer is clear. You're infinitely better. It's way better to build your own empire rather than somebody else's, which is really what you're saying there.
Well, it is, but why do you think so many people, and our listeners as well, because I get these emails, I'm in this job and I really don't like it, but I don't know what to do. But I say to them, you got to think about who you want to work for. Do you want to work for somebody else and just be content of getting a salary check each month, and then ultimately they might go, right, we don't want you anymore? Or would you rather do things behind the scenes while you're doing that and try to bring in other income to then give you a choice? I'm not a big advocate of punching your boss in the face and then clearing out and trying to make it up as you go along. I'm not that brave. I know some people do that and it works very well. But I do think that the world as a whole should realise that the risky position is now being an employee and not being somebody that's driving their own future.
Oh, of course, I absolutely agree with that. But the reason people are afraid to go off on their own is because of the training, right? If you can't see what's possible, then you only see what you know. And what you know is the training that you've received throughout your school years, which then turn into your employee years. And you don't know any better until you start learning. So start learning, people. Start reading books.
I'm going to play you a little speech now, which I throw in the show literally all the time now because I really like this speech. And I'm going to ask your thoughts after this because I think this is spot on. But then I'm the host of this show, so I can say statements like that. Listen to this.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
I love that, and I want the world to hear that and listen to it. What do you think?
Amen. No, I mean, that's Jim Carrey. I love it. Yeah, he's absolutely right.
Why is he so right? And I think he's so right. And even people who I've played it to go, yes, he's so right. What are you doing on Monday? Oh, I'm going to work. And they still go off to these jobs that they don't like. I've got loads of friends that are doing work on a daily basis that they hate. And when I get them worked up, and I can get them worked up quite easily, to be honest, and, what are you dreaming about? Oh, wouldn't it be great if you could do this? And all that kind of stuff. They start telling me all these fantastic things that they want to do. And, but there's always, 2 years' time, I reckon I'll be ready in 2 years' time, or 5 years' time. There's always some kind of time frame that they've linked in. And I say, no, that's only limitation. You're setting that time. You could do it in 3 months' time if you focused in on it. You could do 2 months' time. You've just got to know what you want and go for it. And I'm not saying that so that you go off and you live in a cardboard box for the rest of your life. I totally believe that that's the way forward, and you can do that for you. And it'll be a better life, and it'll be so exciting. Yeah, I know you're right, but I'll wait for 2 years. Why do you think they do that?
It's fear. It's complacency. It's safety. It's so much easier. When my job before I broke out on my own, I was making 6 figures working, and this is not an exaggeration, 15, that's 15 minutes per week. Per week, not per day.
Say that loudly so that because my jaw dropped out and I dropped my pen then. 6 figures.
6 figures working 15 minutes per week.
Why did you quit? Why didn't you just do half hour and double your money?
Well, it wasn't exactly like that, right? I was in network engineering, but I was basically a fireman. I wasn't getting paid for what I did. I was getting paid for what I knew how to do, and I had to be on site to address issues as they come up. So what it wasn't exactly like I can double 15 minutes and make double the money. But yeah, and that was a hard thing to leave. For obvious reasons. It was safe. It was, I felt secure. I had good health insurance and all that stuff. But for me, it came down to whose empire am I building, my own or somebody else's? And when I left, I didn't even know what my empire is supposed to be. I just knew that I didn't want to work for somebody else. And while I had that job, I did start a business on the side. It was DVD kiosks before Netflix was a clear winner. But I dumped like 50 grand into that business of my own money, and it took 2 years to fail. So I started while I was there, and I sort of experimented and learned a lot through my failures and whatnot. So I didn't even know, once it was done, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I just knew that what I didn't want to do.
Well, that's the key thing. I've been saying that for years, that people go, oh, what do you want to do? And I go, I don't know. I just know the things I don't want to do because I've tried them and I haven't liked them. I just don't know what it is. And it's really difficult, isn't it, for people? And especially when you hear that phrase all the time. And it's one of my ranty moments because I hate this phrase, find your passion. Find your passion. It's like Obi-Wan. And you kind of go, I don't know my passion, so stop telling me it's my passion. And when it hits you in the head, you kind of go, oh, yeah, you were right. I realise what they're saying now. But it's one of those phrases. If you are trying to find something that you love and something that you want to do, you want an answer. You want somebody to almost give it to you, and you can go, okay, I will start working on that now. Because one of the things, Dino, that I've discovered in this show, and it's taken me by surprise, actually, how many people who are, and you are successful, so I'm going to use that word again, are successful doing stuff that if they look back to their younger self, they're sort of like you really small kids, are kind of almost similar to the things that they used to rush home and do for free when they were kids. So if you liked building stuff now, you were probably playing with Lego bricks and stuff. And if you're a networker, you were somebody that would have all your mates around and make clubs in the shed. And if you was, there's similarities, because that is where your passion lies. Your passion lies before you forget about it due to responsibilities and earning money and all those other things that come in adulthood.
I think you're absolutely right. And when you say that, and people are like, well, I used to like Lego blocks when I was a kid, and I enjoyed that back then, but it would be silly for me to do that as an adult. That's where the thinking process stops, right? It's like, I liked it as a kid, but it would be silly for me to do it as an adult. If you say that, the thinking stops and you get nothing out of it. But if you dig deeper, you find what it is that you liked about building Lego blocks, and you can actually apply it today. So I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, in my early 20s, even my mid to late 20s, I was in rock bands. I wanted to be a rock star, right? That's what I wanted to be ever since the 7th grade, right? But that didn't quite work out.
Why didn't it work out? Because
well, actually, we're going to talk about that in the last part of the show. I'll tell you why. So I'll keep you and the listeners on the hook for that one. So today, instead of being a rock star and playing guitar in bands and singing stuff like that, being on stage like that, I speak. I get paid to travel across the country, across the world, and to get up on stage and speak. And I can do this without being embarrassed when I'm 50. I can do this without being embarrassed when I'm 60, right? Because let's face it, like Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones and Steven Tyler and Aerosmith, like, once you hit like 50 and you're still rocking it, it's a little embarrassing, right? Especially if you're not successful. Like, those guys are super successful. But if you're not successful, like I wasn't successful, and you're 50 and you're still like rocking it on stage, it's a little pathetic,
kind of
right?
like that, because it is pathetic. And they've got that kind of passion to keep going, even though there's two people and a bag of crisps in front of them, and they're playing it like it's Madison Square Garden. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I do too. But so what I liked about is I liked performing in front of an audience. I like the adulation. I like the attention. I like being on stage. So if I liked it doing it, in a rock star context when I was a kid, while that context may not be congruent with who I am and what I am today, there's underneath that surface, there's something deeper, right? And if you look for that something deeper, you'll find something that you can do today that gives you the same type of feeling. And for me, that's speaking.
Is it all down to feeling then?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, we're emotional animals. All logic is reverse logic. All rationalization is reverse rationalization. We feel and there's ample neuroscientific evidence about this. We feel stuff first, and then we come up with rational reasons why we feel that way. That's straight out of a book.
Because at the beginning on the intro, I said, "Oh, I feel like I'm on drugs," and I do. I'll be honest. I've never even taken drugs. I have no idea, but I just feel.
Me neither.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel really high doing this because I find it so exciting and so invigorating. And it's a weird thing, Dino. We've never met until tonight. And I will tell you, you play piano, I play piano. When I was younger, I wanted to be a pop star. You wanted to be a rock star. I've spent my life doing professional training courses and presentations, and I know exactly that vibe of standing up in front of people and just being absolutely unique to yourself and almost playing in front of an audience and how it makes you feel. So you certainly have got a kindred spirit from this side. But
I taught network engineering for 7 years.
And I didn't. So there you go. You've killed it. You killed it. And another thing that I've never done, I've never put a song on YouTube, but I found one today called Airplane Made for Two. And I'm going to play it now. I'm going to play it now because this is the guest. This is Mr. Dino Dogan as his rock star self. Have a listen to this. I won't play all of it. And you might want to turn down the volume. Or if you're in... Yeah, or if you're in traffic, wind up the windows so nobody can hear this. But this is Airplane Made for Two.
It may start in A minor, but this is not a sad song. She gave me everything, then she took it away to sting. Then she left me my plane, which took her back. She climbed up on my back and I carried her up the block, which gave her time to camp inside my heart.
How good is that? That's a bit Green Day, isn't it?
I guess. I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, could you not hear anything?
No, it didn't come through for me, but I hope it's recorded so listeners can hear it. I know how the song goes.
It was amazing. It was Airplane Made for Two. It's a bit of a bitter song, I thought.
Yeah. I'll leave it up to the listener to decide what it is.
But I think we could try to get it as the Christmas #1. I reckon we could push it onto Triber and get a sort of viral thing going. Airplane made
That'd
for
be nice.
Airplane made for Triber. That'd be brilliant. But you have, you can hear that you had a passion when you were doing that. You thought yourself, "I'm writing a song." And when you were recording it, it wasn't you just doing a little voice. That was you going full pelt. And is that how you live life now? When you're presenting, are you going full pelt, or do you hold?
I certainly hope so.
So you don't hold anything of yourself back.
I've learned to hold back a little bit in certain contexts, and we can talk about that. But when it comes to presenting on stage and stuff like that, I mean, especially if it's like a few hundred people, 1,000 people in the audience, I hate seeing a speaker on stage who's not captivating. Right? And when you're playing in front of a big audience, listen to me playing as if it's a rock show, right? Speaking in front of a big audience, you have to project certain kind of, both volume and I mean that not only voice wise, but also body language wise and positioning and engaging and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I certainly try to.
And was that something that you just naturally had? Did you step up on stage and bang, it was there? Because I kind of did, but then I took it to a sort of more extensive version of myself. I kind of became this bigger character when I was up on stage than I was when I began. But it was still pretty much myself. Was that the same with you, or did you go for a transition and then one day you suddenly thought, hang on, I think I'm really getting it. This feels natural.
No, there's a video of me when I was 17 on YouTube. Luckily, it's not associated with my name, so you can't quite find it. But there's a video of me at 17 performing on stage, and just like, A, belting it out, and B, jumping around as if like a maniac. So, no, it was always there.
We will put the links to that on the show notes so that you can see. No, I haven't found it, but I'm going to try my hardest to find it. I'm going to spend my time on YouTube for hours and hours and hours.
It's a song in Bosnian, too, and you can hear the girls screaming in the audience, too. That's the best part about it.
The sort of Eastern European sort of countries, they have a weird kind of singing, don't they? Because I went to Turkey on holiday a couple of years ago, and I'm a big karaoke fan. If there's a karaoke, I'll be the first one up there. I don't care at all. And normally when you go to sort of karaoke, you get one of these books that you could hardly lift, can't you? And they're like huge amount of songs, huge amount of artists. And the one that we went to, there was about 3 sheets of A4, and so every song that you did when you went up there you'd never done before, because after a while you get a kind of group of karaoke songs that you can just about do, and so you flick through and you find these. And so we were going, right, okay, we'll go with this one, and you'd get up and you didn't know you were going to do it. But then the Russians was just da, 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 ja, da, 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 da. And it would go on for like 15 minutes, their songs, but they loved it. They were going for it big time. Is that the same? Are you big on Bosnian karaoke?
No, I mean, I haven't been there in like 20 years, so I'm a little out of the loop. The stuff we were doing, it was very much Americanized, British and American rock type of deal. So it's much more familiar to your ears, for example.
So what is it that you love about America compared to Bosnia, or Bosnia compared to America? Are there sort of similarities between the two?
Oh, I don't know. Love is a strong word. I have a sort of radical feelings about countries and nationalities in general. Last week, I had an idea to start a virtual country, like a country that only exists online. It's non-corporeal. It issues you with citizenship and passport, and it's member of the United Nations. And if you're in like a bad way somewhere in a war zone or whatever, right, you can use its passport to go someplace else and whatnot. So the whole borders and lines between countries, I don't accept them as valid, even though we have to, submit to someone making that shit up way back when. So I don't know. Love is a strong word.
Because I don't understand with travel, and I've travelled lots of places, and I don't understand why I have to go through the border. I don't understand why I can't just walk over a mountain somewhere and come in on the other side.
Well, what's funny about that, like 500 years ago, the seas, before, boat travel was commonplace, right? And I think this started in Britain, in fact. The country that owned the coast owned about 2 miles out to the sea, and beyond that, it was no man's land. And the reason it was 2 miles is because the cannons could only go that far, right? So if somebody was to attack or whatever, right? And then the air rights didn't exist until about, 50 or 100 years ago or whatever, right? So you would essentially, if you're America or Britain or whatever, you would own maybe like 500 feet up in the air or something like that, until air travel became commonplace. And now we have this concept of airspace, right? So it's like we're making this stuff up as we go along. And it all started with drawing the line in the sand, thousands of years ago. And it's the line in the sand is just as made up as the air rights, as the sea rights, and so on. So, unfortunately, we live in the real world where we have to like submit to these rules for now. But somebody should do something about that.
Yeah, just walk across a mountain. That's all we got to do. Just dodge them.
There you go.
If you go like 100 yards to the left of the border and zip behind the bus stop and you could get through, I imagine.
Well, people do it all the time.
Absolutely. That's what I like to do. I like to I think, Dino, deep down, I kind of like to break rules, really. I'm always the kind of person that will walk up to wet paint and touch it just to see if it's wet. And my kids always say to me, Dad, it says it's wet paint. And I go, oh, what are they going to do, arrest me for touching wet paint? And it's wet. I've got paint on my hands now. But I've got to do that. And are you a bit like that? Do you see things and kind of think, why am I being told I can't do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, somebody made up those rules, right? They're not bigger, smarter, or more enlightened than you. And even if they were, it doesn't mean you shouldn't question those rules and whatnot. So yeah, absolutely.
Just before we get back to your sort of your transition through, because I am aware that this is called join up dots. I was talking to a chap the other day, and he said that he's a life coach, and I said to him, did you get any qualifications for that? He said no. I just said I was a life coach. And I went, why was that? He said, because why the hell should I qualify just because somebody tells me I have to qualify? If you want me to teach you how to make $1 million, I've done that numerous times. I can teach you. If you want me to do X, Y, Z, I know it from experience. So I'm never going to get a qualification just because somebody told me I had to. And for the people that are out there wanting to do these things, thinking that you've got to go out there and spend 2 or 3 years training to do this, just say that you've done it. Just do it, and you will gain more from that experience. Is that a kind of naive sort of rule-breaking view, or do you think that's got relevance?
That's absolutely relevant. I mean, the other profession that's the same way, and there's a lot of professions like this, is comedians, right? You're a stand-up comic the moment you decide to be a stand-up comic. There's no governing body that deems you worthy of being a stand-up comic, right? And then, a few years later and a bunch of performances later, you become Ricky Gervais or someone like that, right? Network engineering. when I got my first job, and this was true for pretty much every single job in that field that I ever got, um, it was mid 90s, 95, 96. And if you remember back then, Windows 95 first came out. And basically, you were a computer guy if you knew how to use a mouse and you knew what a computer was. You were the computer guy, right? And no one gave me a permission to be a network engineer. I just said I was, and I got lucky enough to land a job in that field, and I did that for a bunch of years. And through that process, it's a certification-driven field. IT field is a certification-driven field. Through the years, I got a whole mess of certifications, but it started from me deciding I'm going to work with computers.
Because I started by thinking I'm going to be a podcaster. And no one's told me anything. I've just kind of stuck a microphone on and started recording. And now I have people coming to me because they believe I'm a podcaster. Oh, the stupid people for thinking that. But all I'm doing is just doing something by incremental gains and hopefully getting better at it and producing better content and more inspirational content, blah, blah, blah. But I never said I was a podcaster. I just started creating podcasts.
No. It's just do it.
Just do it. Screw it. Just do it, Branson says.
I like that.
Yeah, I think so. Just do it. Right. So what is your... If you look back on your life and in Join Up Dots, there's always a big dot. There's a big dot that you will go, yes, that was the time that I became Dino Dogan. Is there one when you look back, and quite often it's a dark time when you kind of screwed up or something and you realise that you had to learn from that success, but it's shown you the path. Do you know where your big dot is?
That's interesting. Well, like the most recent one, I think it was the huge failure of my first business that I tried to do on my own. I've learned a lot of valuable lessons through that process, and it wasn't like a terrible financial failure, even though I lost a lot of money. It like in the grand scheme of things, it didn't affect me, but in terms of, I mean, it's kind of a hard thing to put 2 years into a business and a bunch of money and then fail miserably. So there's probably two things that I've learned. One is I've learned to recognize the enthusiasm, right? Because anytime you start anything new, you figure enthusiasm will carry you through, right? And that's dangerous because then you don't devise a plan or you don't work hard enough. You just figure enthusiasm will take care of that. So that's dangerous thinking, and I think I've learned to recognize when that enthusiasm happens to me. So I can say, oh, okay, I'm really into this. This is really cool. The enthusiasm is taking over. The momentum of that emotion is taking over. But now I need to rationally think about how to, go from point A to B to C and so on. So I think that's one piece. And the other piece is there's a wide range of skills required to run a business. And some of those skills I just don't have. Like I tried learning accounting and bookkeeping and stuff like that. I tried to run these more cerebral parts of the business. And not only do I hate it, but I suck at it, for Triber, Dan Christo and I started Triber in 2011. He's my partner in crime in Triber. And he makes up a lot of the shortcomings that I have. So, I recognize that I needed somebody who can, pick up slack, essentially, and vice versa. So those were the two, I guess, biggest lessons from that particular failure.
But was there a moment when you kind of went, yes, I can now see what I want to do? All the blogs I've done that haven't quite worked, all the love songs I've written for girls that aren't with me anymore, all the dog training, all those kind of things were just my dots leading up to this. Was there a moment like that?
Yeah, I think that came together for me with Triber. Because I really understood the pain points of content creators, because I am a content creator. And, you know, I had a vertical that was semi-successful for a while, two-wheel tips. It was a motorcycle, Facebook, whatever. I had a dog blog, and that was, again, you know, somewhat successful. I built a nice community, and I got some business out of it. And it led to my other blogs and whatnot. So I understood the space, and I understood the pain points, and I understood the stuff that we covered early in the show. You know, this fact that 1% of super sites get 99% of attention, and in turn they dictate the narrative. They dictate the cultural zeitgeist, if you will, right? And we are powerless to affect that narrative. We are powerless to dictate that cultural zeitgeist. And I saw a need for that, and you know, it all came together with Triber for me. Yeah.
So let me play, because I'm going to send you back in time very shortly, and I normally do this a lot earlier in the show, but I want to play the words of Steve Jobs because that's the theme of this show, and I'm going to play these, and I'm just going to ask whether you think yes, he's nailed it, and it is true to your life, or is this the biggest load of tosh that you've ever heard? This is
I already know the words you're going to play, and I can already tell you I absolutely agree. But go on.
I'm going to play them anyway, so here we go. My fingers on the mouse. I could become a networking giant. You see, I'm like a legend on the mic.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
So you already go, yes, that's absolutely spot on.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've read Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, which is a great book. I highly recommend it. And you know, to put some meat around the bones that you just played, sort of put concrete examples around what Steve Jobs just said. When he was in college, he took a typography course. And he spent some time in India learning Buddhism and Zen and stuff like that. So these two things, this, you know, typography, this love of creating a perfect font, and this serene-like design of, for example, Buddhist temples and stuff like that. That stuff came together in a MacBook design. That stuff came together. But like going into it, there's no way he could have known that. But those two things affected, you know, everything he's done design-wise and business-wise down the road. So, yeah, you know, that's just the concrete examples of specifically Steve Jobs of what he was talking about.
And would you say that you've always agreed with that, or is it just now that you're successful, use that word again, that you can actually go, yes, that's spot on?
Nah, if I heard that when I was 20, I'd probably, like, gloss over it, and I'd be like, oh, that's dumb. That doesn't mean anything to me. Right? I wouldn't understand what he was saying.
I think that's nice, though, isn't it? That you do become more accepting as you get older.
Hopefully wiser.
That never happens.
And yes,
no, you do not become wiser, do you? Only Yoda became wiser, and Doctor Who. All the rest of us are just stumbling along, making the same mistakes. You know, if we were so wise, we wouldn't have watched Indiana Jones 4, would we? We would have learnt to leave it behind. That's probably one of the best points I've ever made. I'm going to put you back on the mic now. This is the part of the show when I can send you back in time. And while you're going back in time, I'm going to bathe in my glory of that comment then. And if you could walk into the room and you could see a young Dino sitting there, what advice would you give to him? And what kind of advice do you think that he would listen to? So this is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
What would I say to myself a bunch of years ago? This is hard. I know exactly what I would say, but it's hard because I don't think I would listen to it then because I don't listen to it now. And here's what it is: go where the action is. And by that, I mean, so, in my 20s, I was trying really hard to be a rock star, to, have a successful band and stuff like that. But I was in Jersey, right? And there are very few bands, especially in the 90s, that are successful that came from Jersey. If you compare that to Seattle, for example, right? Around the same time frame. There's a ton of bands that came out of that scene. And, if I wanted to, be a rock star or whatever, right? I needed to move my ass to Seattle. But I didn't know that then. And if I told that to my younger self, I probably would disregard that advice anyways. And the same thing happens in the 2000s. I remember being in a classroom. It was early 2000s, probably 2001, 2002. And I was really pissed at Google search for giving me all these blogs in my search results. This is before Google had specific blog search and whatnot. I was like, what is this nonsense? Why are people writing this stuff? Why are people producing this content? This is silly. This is not what I want. And if I saw it for what it is, which is a rising tide, I would have, I would have started my blog way earlier. I would have created content way earlier. I would have started, a site like Mashable, like, BuzzFeed, like whatever, TMZ, Jezebel, right? All these sites started in the mid 2000s, right? Which is when population online exploded. So rising tide lifts all boats. If your boat was in the, ocean at that moment during that time, you would have made some kind of dent in the universe, to go back to Steve Jobs' quote. And even today, where's the action? The action is on the West Coast, Silicon Valley, LA, San Diego. That's where the insane startup money is. And, we're looking to raise money. But I'm in Jersey, so I'm trying to raise money in Jersey. So I keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. So I don't know if I'd listen to myself, but that's the advice I would give myself.
So pretty much you're saying surround yourself with success.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. But I feel that success is one of those things that has a lot of luck and timing involved with it, And timing has to do with locations. I've talked about this in my talks in the past. If you look at guitar gods, right? There are a few names that stand out: Pete Townsend, Jimmy Page. Go ahead, sir. Name
Eric
them.
Clapton,
Clapton,
Jimi Hendrix,
right? Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck,
Kermit.
right?
Oh no, that was a banjo, wasn't it?
Remove Jimi Hendrix from that bunch, and they were all born or in the same area in the suburbs of London and whatnot, about 12 miles apart, about 2 years apart.
I didn't realize Kermit came from London.
Not Kermit,
right.
The other
Okay.
four. And they all launched their careers in the early 60s, I want to say, in London, same place, including Jimi Hendrix, right? So there's a time and place that plays a huge factor in anyone's success. We can also go back to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. They started their companies about a year apart on the West Coast.
And they were all born in 1955.
They were born a year or two apart, or same year, I forget exactly. But timing and place has a lot to do with it. So recognizing the timing and recognizing the place where you need to be at that time is just hugely, hugely important. And, recognizing the place that I'm in and what needs to happen for me and for my company, I'm not in the right place. It might be the right time, but it's not the right place.
It's funny. I feel the same way, really. I feel like I'm one person totally on his own and everything else is happening on the west coast of America. It's a bizarre feeling, but that's a totally different show. Dino, it's been absolutely amazing having you on the show today, and I know all the listeners out there will think you're amazing as well. So how can they connect with you?
DinoDogan.com. Keep it simple.
It sounds like a mafia site, doesn't it, really?
I found this out when I was like 24, 25. Dogan is Turkish for falcon.
Oh, okay. And what's
I had no idea.
What's Dino short for?
No, it's just Dino.
Oh, not dinosaur or something like that.
No. Nope.
That would be amazing.
That would be pretty cool.
The dinosaur falcon. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots of your life. And please do come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our past is the very best way to build our futures. Dino Dogan, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.